I am 75 years old, and yesterday I discovered that the woman I loved and trusted for more than half a century was never completely honest with me. 30 years ago, my wife betrayed me, and until yesterday, my entire life was built on a truth that was never fully true. My name is Alex. I have been married to my wife Stacy for 55 years. When I look back at my life now, it sometimes feels like I am remembering someone else's story. We built our life slowly, step by step, the way many people build a family when they believe that love is not something loud or dramatic, but something quiet, patient, and permanent. We raised our children together. We watched them grow up, face their own problems, find love in their lives, and later give us grandchildren who filled our home with noise, laughter, and the kind of happiness that only children can bring. Today, when our family gathers, our house feels alive. There are conversations about work, school, relationships, and everyday things that may seem small, but somehow become the heart of family life. Looking at my family now, many people would say that I lived a successful life. And for many years, I believed the same thing. Our house was never chaotic. It was not the kind of place where people shouted or fought loudly, but it was not lonely either. There were birthdays where we cut simple cakes and sang happy birthday slightly off key. There were Christmas evenings with warm lights, small presents, and long conversations about things that were not important, yet somehow became memories that I will carry until the end of my life. I was not a rich man. I was not famous. I spent most of my life working hard just to provide for my family. Every morning, I woke up early, drank my coffee quietly, prepared for work, and returned home tired but satisfied because I believed I was building something meaningful. For me, being a good husband and a good father was more important than professional success. Money could buy comfort, but I always believed that trust and love were the real foundation of a family. I believed I had a real marriage. Trust was the center of my relationship with Stacy. For many years, I never allowed myself to think about betrayal, not even once. When you love someone for decades, your mind stops creating scenarios where that person could hurt you. It is not blindness. It is emotional safety. It is the feeling that the person sleeping next to you at night is the same person who will grow old with you. I trusted my wife completely. I trusted her with my fears, my memories, and the thoughts I never shared with anyone else. There were nights when I felt exhausted from work, worried about our children's future, or thinking about what kind of life my grandchildren would have. And Stacy was always beside me. I believed we understood each other without too many words. I believed our love was something stable and quiet, something that time itself could not break. People around us often said that we were a good couple. Sometimes they told me I was lucky to have her, and I always answered that I knew it, because I truly believed I was lucky to spend my life with the woman I loved. I loved her not only as my wife, but also as the mother of my children and the woman who shared my entire adult life. I spent 55 years building a life that I thought was based on honesty. I raised my children. I worked. I grew old beside the woman I called my wife. I watched my hair turn gray. I felt my body become weaker as the years passed. I accepted that aging was part of life, but I believed that my marriage was stronger than time itself. That was my biggest mistake, because yesterday I learned that one part of my life was built on a secret that lived inside my marriage for 30 years, and I heard it directly from her. Yesterday, my wife told me the truth. It happened in the evening. We were sitting in our living room, the same place where we spent so many quiet nights together, watching television or talking about things that did not really matter. The air in the room felt different that day. I cannot explain why, but I remember feeling a strange heaviness in my chest even before she spoke. She was sitting opposite me. Her hands were resting on her knees, and I noticed that she was looking at the floor more than at my face. At first, we talked about normal things, about our children, about our grandchildren, about everyday life. It felt like a completely ordinary conversation. And then there was silence. Not the comfortable silence we sometimes shared, but a different kind of silence. The kind that feels like something important is about to be said. She told me that she had something to confess. Her voice was quiet, almost trembling. I did not interrupt her. I just waited. Because deep inside, I felt that whatever she was about to say would change my life forever. Then she told me the truth. She said that 30 years ago, when I was 45 years old, she cheated on me. I remember the exact moment I heard those words. At first, I did not understand them. My brain needed a few seconds to process what she had said. It felt like my mind was trying to protect me by slowing down reality. I asked her to repeat what she said, and she did. She told me that it was a mistake. She said it happened only once. She said it was a moment of weakness during a difficult period of her life. But what hurt me the most was not the betrayal itself. It was the fact that she carried this secret inside her for 30 years. 30 years of waking up next to me. 30 years of eating dinner together. 30 years of celebrating birthdays and family holidays. 30 years of pretending that nothing was wrong. I tried to speak, but my voice did not come out immediately. It felt like my chest was empty, like someone had removed the air from inside my body. I was not angry at that moment. I was not crying. I was just shocked, because I was trying to understand how my entire adult life could contain a secret that I never knew about. I looked at her face. She was crying, not loudly, just silently, like someone who has carried guilt for too long and finally decided to release it. She told me that she wanted to tell the truth many years ago, but was afraid of losing me, afraid of destroying our family, afraid of hurting our children. So she chose silence. And that silence became 30 years of her life. When she finished speaking, the room became completely quiet. I could hear the sound of my own breathing. I thought about the years we spent together. I thought about our children growing up. I thought about every memory that suddenly felt different after her confession. I did not know what to say. Part of me wanted to scream. Part of me wanted to ask why she waited so long. Part of me wanted to ask whether our marriage was ever truly honest. But I was too tired to shout. At 75 years old, anger feels heavier than sadness. So I just sat there and listened to the silence. Because sometimes the hardest part of betrayal is not the truth itself. It is realizing that the life you remember may not be the life that actually happened. And that was the moment when I understood that my past would never look the same again. Yesterday, after Stacy confessed that she had cheated on me 30 years ago, I could barely process the words. She told me that it happened when we were both 45, during a time when she felt lost and uncertain. She said it was a brief mistake, a moment of weakness that never happened again. According to her, it was a single night filled with confusion and regret, a night she had carried silently in her heart for decades, but she could not go into details without crying. I did not respond immediately. My mind felt as if it had been struck sideways, as if the years we shared and the life we built had suddenly been rewritten in an instant. I simply sat there and listened to her trembling voice, feeling disbelief, sorrow, and a strange numbness I had never experienced before. I did not shout or accuse her. I had no words capable of expressing what I was. After a long pause, Stacy left the room quietly, probably understanding that I needed time alone. I did not follow her and did not speak. I walked slowly to my bedroom, each step feeling heavier than the last. Inside the room, I closed the door and sat near the window, staring at the dim light outside. The house looked the same, but everything felt different. The walls, the furniture, and the photographs that once brought me comfort now seemed to carry memories that were suddenly uncertain. I spent the night thinking about our 55 years together, trying to separate truth from illusion. I remembered our children growing up, our family dinners, and the long conversations we had late at night. But now, every memory felt heavier, as if part of our shared life had been built on something I never knew was false. I thought about Stacy's eyes when she spoke, the way her voice broke under the pressure of confession. I wondered why she waited so long to tell me, why she carried this secret for 30 years. I questioned everything I believed about love, trust, and commitment. I wondered whether I could ever feel the same comfort in her presence again, or whether our life together had partly become a carefully hidden performance. The night felt endless. I moved between the chair and the bed, unable to sleep, thinking about what this revelation meant for my family and for the rest of my life. I thought about my children and grandchildren and how I could explain something like this to them. I questioned forgiveness, love, and whether I wanted to continue living as if nothing had happened when a part of my history had been silently changed. By early morning, I still had no answers. The silence of the house was absolute, broken only by the ticking of the clock and the faint sounds of the world outside. I realized that the rest of my life would be shaped by what I learned yesterday. My memories, my emotions, and my understanding of love would never be the same again. I knew that the days ahead would require decisions I was not ready to make, and for now, I could only remain alone with my thoughts, carrying the weight of a secret that had changed everything I believed about my marriage and my life. I did not speak to Stacy for a few days after her confession. During that time, I stayed mostly in my room, thinking about everything that had happened. I needed distance to understand my own feelings before making any decision. One evening, we sat down together to talk. It was not an easy conversation. The air between us felt heavy, as if every word could break the fragile silence that had grown between us. I told her that I could not continue our marriage the way it was before. I spoke calmly, without anger. I did not want revenge, and I did not want to punish her. At 75 years old, anger feels too exhausting to carry, and I had already spent too many hours thinking in silence. But I also understood something I could not ignore. 30 years of hidden truth had changed something inside me that I could not repair. When I told her that I wanted a divorce, my voice was steady and slow because every word felt important. I told her that I respected the life we built together, but I could not continue living in a marriage where such a secret had existed for 3 decades. She started crying quietly, not loudly, not dramatically, but in the way people cry when they already feel that a painful moment is inevitable. She told me she was afraid of losing me. She said she was afraid that telling the truth would destroy our family. But I told her that the truth had already changed our family, even if it had stayed hidden for 30 years. Silence followed our conversation. Not the comfortable silence we once shared, but the kind of silence that feels like a wall standing between two people who once believed they would grow old together. I thought about our children. I thought about our grandchildren. I thought about how divorce at my age would look from the outside and how people would talk about it. Some would probably say I was too old to start a new life. Some might say I should forgive because we had spent so many years together. Others might believe that marriage should survive mistakes. But I realized that this was not only about a mistake. It was about the life I believed I had lived. Love is not only about staying together. Love is also about honesty and trust. I felt that something inside our marriage had broken in a way that time could not fix. I told Stacy that I did not hate her. I told her that I was not trying to punish her, but I also told her that I could not live the rest of my life pretending that everything was the same as before. At 75 years old, I do not have the strength to carry bitterness, but I also do not have the strength to carry a secret that destroyed my trust. The decision was not made in a single moment. It was the result of many hours of thinking, remembering, and questioning my own heart. I thought about the man I was at 45. I thought about the husband I believed I had been. I thought about the life I wanted to remember when I looked back before my death. I realized that I needed a version of my life built on truth, even if that truth was painful. Divorce was not something I wanted, but it became something I felt was necessary, not because I stopped caring about the years we spent together, but because I could not continue living in a marriage where trust had died silently decades ago. When I told Stacy my decision, she did not argue. She only asked whether there was still any chance that I could forgive her someday. I did not answer immediately because I did not know the answer, and I told her exactly that. I told her that forgiveness is not something I can promise simply because I once loved her. After I made the decision to divorce Stacy, the next hardest step was telling our children the truth. I knew this conversation would change the atmosphere of our family forever, and I spent a long time thinking about how to explain everything without causing unnecessary pain. We decided to tell them together. It was important that they hear the truth from both of us, even though it was difficult for me to sit next to the woman who had broken my trust while talking about something that had changed my life. We invited our children to our home one afternoon. The house felt different that day. Usually, our home was filled with the sound of conversation, laughter, and the energy of family life. But that day, there was a heavy silence hanging in the air, as if everyone already felt that something serious was about to be said. When our children arrived, I could see confusion in their eyes. They noticed that something was wrong immediately. Parents may think they can hide emotional pain from their children, But children are often more perceptive than we believe. We asked them to sit down. My hands were slightly trembling, but I tried to keep my voice calm. I told them that Stacy had something to confess and that it was important for them to hear it directly. Stacy began telling the story. She spoke slowly. She told them that 30 years ago, she made a mistake and cheated on me once during a difficult period of her life. She explained that she had carried the secret alone for 3 decades because she was afraid of destroying the family we built. The room became very quiet. I could see the shock in my children's faces. One of my daughters started crying silently. My son did not speak for a long time. He just sat there, looking at the floor, trying to process what he had heard. Finally, he asked why we were telling them this now. It was a question I expected. I told them that I had learned the truth only recently. I explained that I did not blame them and that I wanted them to understand that our decision was between me and their mother. I told them that I was planning to divorce Stacy, but that my love for them would never change. I told them that family does not disappear because of divorce. But I also told them that trust is something very fragile, and once broken, it can change everything inside a relationship. There was no shouting, no arguments, only sadness. My children tried to understand my decision, even though I could see the pain in their eyes. They told me that they loved both of us and that they did not want to choose sides. That was exactly what I hoped to hear, because I never wanted my children to feel forced to hate their mother. After the conversation, they hugged me. It was a long, quiet hug that felt heavier than usual. I could feel their sadness, their confusion, and their attempt to support me, even though they did not fully understand what was happening. That day was one of the hardest moments of my life, because I realized that betrayal does not only destroy two people, it also creates ripples that reach the entire family. And I knew that our family would never feel exactly the same again. After we told our children the truth, my life began to change in ways I did not fully expect, because I suddenly found myself standing at the edge of a new existence that I had not planned for and did not know how to navigate. The days after the conversation were quiet, but the silence was different from the silence I had experienced before, because it was no longer the silence of shock or decision, but the silence of a man who was learning how to live alone after spending more than half a century sharing his life with another person. I started spending more time thinking about what my future should look like, because at 75 years old, starting a new life does not mean chasing new dreams in the same way a young person might do. Instead, it means learning how to live with yourself when the structure of your previous life has changed. I tried to create a routine that would keep my mind stable, because uncertainty was the hardest feeling to carry after everything that happened. I began walking outside more often, because walking gave me time to think without feeling trapped inside the house where so many memories were stored. Sometimes I walked through the neighborhood in the morning when the air was quiet and the streets were nearly empty. I watched people living their ordinary lives, going to work, talking on the phone, or walking their dogs, and I realized that life continues regardless of the personal tragedies we carry inside. My relationship with Stacy became distant but respectful. We lived in the same house for a while, but we spoke very little unless it was necessary. There was no hatred between us, but there was also no emotional closeness anymore. I think both of us understood that the marriage we once had was already over even before the divorce process officially began. Some nights I sat alone in my room thinking about what kind of life I wanted for the remaining years I had. I thought about whether I should move to a smaller place, maybe somewhere quieter, where I could live without constantly being surrounded by memories of our marriage. I imagined a simple life where I could read books, watch television, and spend time with my grandchildren without carrying emotional weight that felt too heavy. I also started thinking about loneliness because divorce at my age is not the same as divorce when you are young. When you are young, there is the possibility of building a new relationship, finding new love, or starting a new family. But at 75, life is not about starting something completely new. It is more about finding peace with what remains. I did not know whether I would ever find another partner. I did not even know whether I wanted to. My heart was tired, and my mind was still processing the meaning of everything that had happened. But I began to understand that my life was not over. It was simply entering a different phase. I could still spend time with my family. I could still enjoy small moments of happiness. I could still live with dignity, even if my marriage had ended. Starting a new life did not mean forgetting the past. It meant learning how to carry the past without letting it destroy the future I still had left. And slowly, step by step, I tried to accept that my story was not finished, even if it was changing in ways I never imagined. Now, I am 78 years old, and 3 years have passed since the day I learned the truth about my wife's betrayal. During these 3 years, my life changed in ways I never expected. At first, living alone after the divorce felt strange and unfamiliar because I had spent most of my adult life sharing every important moment with Stacy. The house where I lived felt emptier than before, and silence became a constant companion during the early months after our separation. Over time, I began adapting to a slower and simpler lifestyle. I spent more time with my children and grandchildren because family became the most meaningful source of warmth in my life. I visited them more often, attended family gatherings, and tried to be present in their lives in a way that made them feel my love regardless of what had happened between their mother and me. My daily routine became calmer. I woke up in the morning without the pressure of marital responsibilities, prepared simple meals for myself, and went for walks in the neighborhood when the weather allowed it. Walking became not only a physical activity, but also a way to organize my thoughts and emotions. During those walks, I thought about my life, my past, and the meaning of forgiveness. The pain from the betrayal did not disappear completely, but it became less sharp with time. What once felt like an overwhelming emotional storm slowly transformed into a quiet sadness that lived somewhere deep inside my memory. I learned that healing does not always mean forgetting what happened. Sometimes healing means carrying the memory without allowing it to control your present life. Over these 3 years, I also started feeling that I was slowly reaching a state of peace. I spent less time thinking about the betrayal itself and more time thinking about the life I still had left. I realized that at my age, happiness is not about finding something new or dramatic. Happiness is often found in small moments, like spending time with my grandchildren, reading a book in the evening, or simply sitting quietly and watching the world move outside my window. During this time, my relationship with Stacy changed as well. We spoke occasionally because of family matters, and our conversations were polite and respectful. There was no hatred between us anymore. The anger that once lived inside my heart slowly faded, replaced by something closer to acceptance. After 3 years, I can say that I am almost able to forgive her. I do not know if my forgiveness is complete, and I do not know if it ever will be, but I feel that the bitterness inside my heart is no longer as strong as it once was. I understand that people make mistakes, and sometimes those mistakes can stay hidden for many years before they finally come to light. Almost forgiving her does not mean that what happened was right. It simply means that I have chosen not to carry hatred for the rest of my life. At 78 years old, I believe that peace is more valuable than anger. I do not know how much time I have left in this world, but I want the remaining years of my life to be filled with dignity, family love, and inner calmness, rather than regret or resentment. This is where my story stands today. I learned the truth at 75, struggled with it, made a difficult decision, and spent 3 years trying to understand what forgiveness really means. Maybe love is not only about staying together forever. Maybe love is also about accepting that people are imperfect. Life is fragile, and time changes everything. And this is the story of my life, the truth I learned, and the peace I am slowly learning to carry.